All right, so I've talked a bit already about the compulsory classes in Geant4. So the classes you have to define: the detector construction, matrix geometry, your physics lists to define the particles and types of interactions which those particles can have, and finally the primary generation, the primary generator action. So in Geant4, there's sort of two paths you can take when using the primary generator action or just generating particles in general. So the most common way, especially for newcomers, is the general particle source, and this is generally the easiest option of the two. So the GPS, or the general particle source, it's a collection of commands which are available for the user just to input in the macro. So, with our macro, let's open up a few. Build photon, for instance. So, it gives you all these commands which you can just input into your macro, and then you run the beam. And this can be very powerful, and considering how simple it is, so you can set, if you go to the internet, you can just look up all the available options for the general particle source. So you can set complex particle distributions like semi-solid isotropic sources taking various weird and wacky shapes and taking on different energy histograms. So you could feed in a spectrum of energy and then shoot that spectrum of energy fairly easily. So the GPS is a very powerful tool for considering how simple it is, but the alternative to the alternative to the general particle source, or GPS, is the particle gun. And what the particle gun is the user writes all the commands and defines all the criteria of the beam in the class itself. And so in my in my primary generator action, I've got two different primary sources available. So I've got the gun. Well, I've got a variable called gun, and in that case it's making a particle gun. And I've got the GPS gun, which is using the GPS interface. And in my member function, generate primaries, currently I've just got it set up so it shoots the GPS source here. So it just has this generate primary vertex, and what it does is goes in whatever the macro has been fed in, then I'll use those options and create a primary particle with whatever options you gave it in the macro. So again, very powerful, but if you want to do anything particularly ad hoc, so very specific to your needs, or even if you're just reading in a phase-space file, so if you've got some phase-space file defined in a certain way, then you'd want to use your particle gun to read in that phase-space file. And just like your GPS in the macros, which has all these particular commands, the primary generator action has all these commands as well, and with these various options. So just like with our particles, you could set the particle type. So here I've just got a few examples of electron as in the format. So same names as the macro. And just like the macro, you've got your starting positions and the various functions that you give it for the function. And so let's just save this and compile it, making sure I haven't missed anything. We'll find out soon. Let's just make that. So let's, what was the macro called? So if we go to run photon, and just for fun, if we set the base 1, so let's just try running the edep sim with run photon now that we're using the particle gun. So you see we've got this error 500 of trying to apply the command, but it can't since value photon is not listed. Where's the actual? So it's getting this error of GPS particle photon since in our primary generator, we're now using the particle gun instead of the GPS. So the Geant4 doesn't know what these commands mean, these GPS, because we're using the particle gun, so we have to get rid of those. So let's just quickly make a new macro. So I'll just, based on the photon one, so I'll just go run PG for particle gun, and so I'll just refresh that and open it up. So I'm just going to delete all these GPS options quickly. So just checking it's all just GPS. Yep, so that's all GPS. Save that. And let's try running that again. Run pg.mac. And thankfully it runs. So here we see we've got our particle electron, and its initial energy is 0.1 MeV. It's XYZ. And so just like when we ran the GPS, we get all these the same output that you would expect if you use the GPS. So let's just check what we're running. So we told it to shoot an electron, and we gave it an energy and a priming position. Wait, was it 20? Yep, all right, 00200. And it's good. So if we want to, we could change the particle. So just comment that out. And shoot a proton. Let's give it a energy of 1000 MeV, and we could change its momentum. Change its momentum to, let's go positive Y, and change it to minus Z. So staying the minus Z, going the positive minus Z. Let's change it to minus, just for fun, just any old values. So make that. And just run that again. So if we go up to our first primary, so 1000 MeV, and ionization, good. So, minus 20 in the Y, and taking steps in the Y direction looks all good. So what's which to use out of the primary generator and the GPS? As I mentioned at the start, GPS is a lot simpler, and also you don't have to recompile each time. So if we want to change the energy of the beam, we would have to compile each time, whereas with the GPS we can just quickly change the value here. So if we were just using GPS, we could just quickly go, I want an electron, and just run it with the electron straight away. Whereas with primary generator, we would have to change what particle we wanted and recompile it, then shoot it like that. So the GPS, depending on your workflow, can be a lot simpler and quicker since you don't have to change it, the actual source code and compile. But at the same time, if you're fancy, and what I like to do is to input values into the program itself. So if I was doing a program where the energy changed a lot, then I would just have the number as an input to the main, and then that would set the primary energy. But it's a bit more advanced than just with the GPS where you just change the energy. So what I'm trying to say is, with all this, so if you knew the general particle source, or GPS, it offers a lot of powerful tools, and it's much more safer and simpler to use and to change values. Whereas the primary generator, the particle gun, it's a bit more complex, but you can do pretty much much more powerful things. And if you're reading in phase space files, you really need to use the particle gun. And when you're switching between the two, you have to be careful with the macro you use. So if you're using the particle gun, you can't be using have GPS options, because you'll get an error because it won't know what the GPS option is. So you can't change particles in your macro if you're using the particle gun. But other than that, all the other options that you can use, like your verbosity options and other commands, they all apply regardless if you're using the particle gun or the GPS. But that's the main difference between the particle gun and the general particle source. So you can use either, but generally, for especially newcomers, the general particle source is a lot more friendlier and easier to use than the particle gun.